Good afternoon, everybody from Ireland. My name is Mark Gibson. As Sarah pointed out, I'm a temporary coordinating expert with EIP on this for this particular event, and I'm also program director of the Teagasc Connected program in Ireland, which is a supporting program for the Irish AKIS. So I'm delighted that we have a really high-profile panel joining us today from across Europe. And today we're going to look at what's happening across Europe in terms of AKIS and the steps we need to take to move to the next level, particularly with the next review of the CAP on the horizon. So I just want to check to see that we have our panel with us can hear me okay. So I'm going to ask each of the panelists to briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll get into the various questions. So Anniko, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you. Hi.
Great. Anniko, you might just introduce yourself very briefly, please.
I'm Anniko Juhász from Hungary. I work for the Ministry of Agriculture, but in my role in this panel is more linked to AKIS because I'm the co-chair of the AKIS group behind the SCAR.
Great. Thank you, Anniko. And we have Victor Falguero joining us from Spain. Victor, can you hear us okay?
Hi, Mark. Fine. Yes, perfectly. I'm Victor Falguera from AKIS International, an SME based in Catalonia that since 8 years ago provides independent knowledge and innovation services to the agri-food sector. We work on 3 lines: advisory, training and station, and RDI, and I'm the coordinator of the RDI department of the company. But to put it clear, Mark, I'd say that I'm one of these Michaels from the nice infographic that we saw before. So I'm just one of these kind of workers.
Very good, very good. And next, I'd like to ask Tom Kelly, can you hear us okay? And maybe to introduce yourself, Tom.
Thanks, Mark. My name is Tom Kelly. I am Director of Knowledge Transfer in Teagasc, and I am, I suppose, responsible for the contribution that Teagasc Advisory and Education makes to the Irish AKIS system. So I'm also involved in, have been involved in EUFRAS as the European Advisors Organization.
Thank you, Tom. And next of all, I'd like to invite Shelby Vashon to join us. And Shell, if you could introduce yourself to us.
Yes, hello. My name is Shelby Vashon, and I work as a Senior Policy Advisor for the Federation of Swedish Farmers, LRF, and I'm also the Vice Chair of the COPA COSECA Working Party on Research and Innovation, and my background in brief is some research, advisory services, business development, and now I'm at LRF.
Thank you, Shell. And next we have Corolla Kettleholt from Germany. Corolla, can you hear us okay? No, we don't seem to be getting Corolla. Maybe we will get Corolla. If Corolla could introduce herself when she comes online.
Okay, it's better now?
Oh yes, we can hear you now, Corolla.
Okay. My name is Corolla Kettleholt. I'm working at the Chamber of Agriculture in North Germany, and I'm head of the Innovation Support Service. And we started very early with EIP, and I have experience. I want to tell you about it and how to work with the farmers and the advisors. Yes.
Great.
And I'm a EIP ambassador. Yes.
Excellent, excellent. And maybe there will be one for everybody in the audience later on, perhaps. So let's get down to the questions, and I'd also encourage anybody who has a question for the panel, please submit your questions through the chat function, and we'll endeavour to ask as many of those questions and put those to the panel. So we have about 25 minutes for our chat now. So Tom, if I could start with you, we're all familiar with the challenges that agriculture is facing over the coming years. and that advisory is critical and is going to play even more critical role in the future. What do we need to consider for this transitional phase from FAS across to an AKIS system, or advisors in an AKIS system?
Yeah, I think, Mark, there's a number of factors that we need to consider. I suppose the idea that in the past, the role of FAS, designated advisors, was very much around compliance and cross-compliance in terms of EU support systems that were there to support more or less production type and environmental type initiatives in agriculture. I think that has changed in the current CAP, and there is more an emphasis on other things, and that's welcomed. And I think in the future, in the next CAP, it's going to even change more so. And so some of the things we need to consider are the skills that advisors need. And I was listening with envy to Wim's presentation when I think of the fantastic, I suppose, focus that is there on innovation support, as opposed to just providing services to the farmers and rural communities that he is dealing with, or his organization is dealing with. And I suppose the other areas that, apart from upskilling advisors, is around the motivation of those advisors. And generally, advisors are motivated by metrics which they run their business by themselves, or if they are part of a business environment that they need to measure. So those specific metrics need to be aligned with the objectives of the CAP, and that requires a change in terms of that goes right through organizations like my own, in terms of the management of the organization, the boards of directors, etc. They all need to be convinced that this is the correct change to make. An investment in innovation is very important. And I think more generally, I think the appreciation is gaining very strongly of the shift to more bottom-up approaches, and really the examples that are really working well in terms of operational groups where they are achieving things that we wouldn't have thought possible in the past.
Thanks, Tom. You spoke about operational groups there. In Corolla, you have a lot of experience now with operational groups. What do you consider to be the necessary elements for that transition from an FAS, the current FAS model, to a more integrated AKIS system, and the role of advisors in that?
I think advisors need capacities, time and money and space for working with new members into the new AKIS system. They should develop a new and stable network for working, for creating innovations together, and they need a new motivation to do this. And that's the questions the advisors are asking. How should we do? We have to earn money with our service, and how should we could have space for this new work? And so it's a question, how could we motivate, how could we bring some support to the advisors to feel as a member of the AKIS and to have an important role in this AKIS.
And I suppose we need to rethink the metrics, I guess, in which advisors are measured by as well. Victor, what sort of experience have you had in Spain in relation to that transition? And you've obviously worked a lot with different projects in this area.
Well, on the basis of what Corolla just mentioned, AKIS is a more transversal concept than FAS. So we obviously need to have more people engaged, and these people come from different profiles and have different interests. We've been working on identifying the barriers for the engagement of these different kinds of actors, of academics or researchers, of the public administration at different levels, local administration and regional administration, for example, and of the private sector. I mean, private sector besides farmers, obviously. And it's not an easy job because we have to narrow the gaps between their interests, these different kinds of interests. I usually refer to this with the open innovation 4-helix or 5-helix concept, because it helps me to see the entire framework. So this is the way in which I think that we have to focus on that. And besides this, once we have all of these people engaged, and this is the second point, I think that we have to change the working scheme towards a really collaborative work. I mean, currently the processes are quite linear. We have a certain kind of actor working on each step of the innovation process. For example, farmers participate in describing the problem, and afterwards they wait for researchers or technology developers to build the solution. And after that, farmers come again and they test the solution and say what is working and what is not. And this has led to really good results so far, but I think that we need one step further, one step beyond that. So the challenge is to make them participate, to make all the different actors participate in every step of the innovation process.
Thank you for that, Victor. And Shell, to you, in relation to that, that transition that we need to make, where do you see the effort that needs to go over the next number of months and indeed years?
Yeah, I think we have more complex questions left now, and we need more complex solutions. We need more collaboration in regions, nationally, and across borders. So we have a lot to do, especially across borders, I think, in the next period.
And you have some examples already of that in Sweden, is that correct? I think you mentioned to me before that there's some cross-border collaborations.
Yeah, we try to, we're linked to thematic networks, for example, and one problem this period was to get the funds working together at the same time, but hopefully we will make it better next period. So we have the funding at the same time for operational groups and thematic networks, etc.
Right. Thank you, Shell. Corolla, going back to what we were talking about earlier on, that integration of AKIS, obviously it has been taken on board by the policymakers, the senior managers in the region that you're working in. How important is that step to, and how do you see the importance of having all of those people on board in terms of developing the AKIS? And in I suppose the policy side of things more so.
It's very important to have the politicians on our side. Establishing AKIS will not happen by accident. There are many little steps needed to integrate all the knowledge carriers together. And I think it's a social challenge. And so we need the common policy to do the next steps for integrating of all these of the agricultural branch into a stable network, not only a network for a few weeks or a few years, but a stable network for the future. And I think we need support to do the next steps to create that stable network, and we need politics. Yes, of course, we need it on our side. Then it's working very well. In our region, our minister started very early and said, yes, we want this new funding measure. We want this bottom up and this system like EIP, and then he gave the push, and it was very helpful in this situation. Not starting only as innovation support service, but the background of the minister and his help and his support. Yes, now it's a success story in our region, I could say. Yeah.
Thank you, Corolla. And Tom, could I put the same question to you? Why do you think it's important that AKIS is integrated into policy?
Well, I think if we understand the AKIS correctly, we probably assume that it is, but that assumption may not be correct in all cases. I suppose, look, it's important that the policymakers, as they have done, and Kirsten has identified the key challenges that are out there, but those challenges need to be brought from European and global levels down to regional and local levels, and need to be explained to all the actors within the AKIS system. And there needs to be then a coordinated effort to put that together. Now, this doesn't happen by accident. So there is a need for policy, and there is a need for policy to put, I suppose, funding where their intentions are, and demonstrate their commitment by having funding streams available to try and help that process along. I'm not saying that it's an open checkbook for this, but what I am saying is that it does need something to get it started, and something to help the process and help to strengthen all of the AKIS actors to come together. Because otherwise, if it's left open and left to chance, the likelihood is that some will not move, they will be left behind, and they will not want to move. So they will lack any real motivation to go and be more active within addressing these challenges for the wider society and for the farming community.
Thank you, Tom. And Victor, in terms of what's happening in Spain and your view on the integration of AKIS into policy, do you think that this is an important step for AKIS to live on, if you want?
Well, let me first put it in the fundamental way. I think that it's quite simple. If the question is if we have to consider it as a part of the policy, if we are, as a European society, really believe that AKIS are a good tool, a useful tool for the agriculture and for the rural sector, these differences between what's the rural sector and what's agriculture is very, very interesting. I hope to be discussing a lot further on this in these days. But if we believe that it's a good tool, we must support it. And this means integrating them into the policy. And this also means that all of us have our responsibility from our specific role in providing the policymakers with our best ideas, of our best experience, and with the best tools, so as to make things easy for them to write a really good policy. And when it comes to the importance of well-functioning AKIS, I see this importance far beyond just helping to produce better food. We mentioned that before in his presentation, and I'm fully aligned with that. In Catalonia specifically, we are now very, very focused on taking advantage of the resources that we have in rural areas to produce not only food, but also materials, energy, and services. And that implies the need of developing the cross-sector linkages, which from my point of view should be organized through the AKIS and fostered by policy. And in Catalonia, I'm also very proud to say that we have a very strong commitment of the Catalan government to do so in the next years.
Victor, Shell, from you're involved in a very large farming organization across Europe. How important do you see a functioning AKIS for the future of agriculture and farming in Europe, and that step that is being discussed here today, the integration of AKIS into policy at a regional and member state level?
Yeah, as I said, we have the complex questions left. So I think we need to have a good policy funding, but also education and training locally, regionally, nationally, and hopefully also cross borders, so we can improve on all levels. Operational groups up to multi-actor projects in Europe. But education and training, I think, is very important for the farming community.
Okay, thank you, Shell, for that. Corolla, we often hear your region being discussed about the positive experience with operational groups. Has it all been positive, or what maybe are the lessons that you've learned in the journey that you've traveled so far?
Much have been very, very positive. The results of the operational groups are great. I think they are practical results, and farmers could use it. That's a very good thing. We had from the beginning the innovation support service, and that was very, very helpful and needed, because the administrative burden is high and it should be less in future. We should have simplifications in everything, so that even farmer groups could start without knowledge of finance management in this special way. And so I think innovation support, yes, of course, and less burden, administrative burden. And then Shell said we need more education. And we need more cross-border projects. I like them very much, and we tried to have cross-border operational groups, but it's never the same time when the calls are starting, and it was very complicated to have experts from other member states. In some our groups, they are working together with one expert from Austria or 2 experts from Ireland, green grass management as example, but these are not really operational groups cross-border organized, and that is a challenge for the future, but I think it's a very good thing. In the small video, the speaker said countries and regions are learn from each other, and that's what we need for the future.
Thank you, Corolla. Very wise words. Tom, from an Irish perspective, could you tell us about some of the positive elements of the AKIS in Ireland, and maybe where are there opportunities for change in the next CAP?
Yeah, I suppose one very positive element is that agriculture is really important in the Irish economy, and we are a small country. And I suppose we have one organization like Teagasc, which represents a lot of the functional attributes of the AKIS, of a healthy AKIS system. I suppose that's not to say that we can, I suppose, capitalize on that. I think we still need to have systems in place which support the bottom-up approach and support more, I suppose, on a move to that approach, as opposed to a research science-based approach where we're really trying to push technologies out to farms, and much better to reverse that process and have more demand coming from farmers and their own communities and within their own sectors coming looking for that. So this is a major challenge for us in terms of how we structure an organization and an advisory service and education service around that. I think one of the things that we are probably focusing on quite a bit is around the area of the continuous professional development of both farmers and of other advisor actors within the AKIS system and the whole industry support. And even through your own program, Mark, the Connect Ed program, I think is a good example of how we try to strengthen the AKIS for the future and invest in it now so that it is stronger in the future.
Thank you, Tom. And Victor, do you have any comments in relation to what's happening in Catalonia from the existing AKIS, positive elements there that you could maybe talk us through, and also maybe areas that need improvement or addressing? Briefly, we're yes, getting a little tight on time.
Very briefly, because in fact we had a really good discussion on this point in the Spanish focus group, at the Spanish level. I guess that Andres and Rocío will talk about it on Friday, so I'm going to refer to their session. And mainly we came to the conclusion that operational groups are really a fantastic tool to foster this engagement of the different kinds of actors into the innovation processes. And I guess that this is the opinion of all of our colleagues participating here in this seminar and throughout Europe. More particularly, the competencies framework in Spain allow the regions to adapt this structural management. And this is a really, really good point and a practical thing. And now we have to see how to strengthen the connection among the regional AKIS. So we have these different kinds of levels. We have the regional level, the state level, and the European level. And very briefly also regarding the drawbacks, because I think that this is very important. Well, we have the paperwork, and I'm referring to the words of Corolla. It's still a major problem, even if we provide them with support services. But last, and I think that we should discuss about this in this seminar, in the way that Kerstin Rosenow said during the welcome, I am very, very concerned about how we are going to deal with the processes that need personal connections in this post-coronavirus scenario, because the engagement is going to be tough. I'm working on a couple of projects to develop tools to break this barrier, but right now we don't know whether they are going to be useful. I am gathering some ideas from this seminar and from the tools that you are using. So thank you for that. But we've got a long way to go in this way.
And I want to turn to Aniko now. Aniko, my sincere apologies. You're not appearing on my screen, so you're out of sight, out of mind, so I do apologize for that. But if we could maybe just talk, Aniko, from your own perspective. You have a lot of experience with AKIS, particularly from a SCAR AKIS perspective as well. Could you tell us about, what your views are in terms of that transition from FAS, what needs to happen for that transition to happen to an AKIS environment, and also that policy question I also mentioned earlier on.
Okay, so first of all, it was very interesting to listen to, but I also had the possibility to read the comments. And one of the comments was about why to talk about transition from FAS to AKIS, because AKIS is completely different. In a way, I can agree, because FAS is a sort of advisory function, but in AKIS, I think it's very important that we have innovation and digitalization also as a basic tool, and also in the next CAP is linked into AKIS. And I think it's an important difference, and it's somehow also linked to what Victor asked, that digitalization as part of AKIS could be one of the solutions for this COVID and post-COVID situation. And I'm really, because we usually have AKIS meetings like 3 or 4 times a year, and I think we all really miss it. But we had our last digitalization AKIS meeting, I think almost 3 years ago now. More than 2 years ago. So I think it would be very nice to have another one, a rediscussion of how digitalization can help our AKIS. So I think that's very important. Then AKIS is more than FAS with innovation and digitalization. And we need to go into the digitalization, not just the tools, but also the social background more and deeply because of COVID. And especially because of farmers. I don't know in other countries, but definitely in Hungary and some of the Eastern European countries I know, farmers are quite conservative about how they are willing to learn. So they are willing to learn more from personal experience. So all those possibilities with demonstration farms or on-farm trainings or fairs or presentations where they can talk with the other farmers are very important. So now we are all missing out on that. And at the present, we don't have really good solution how to bridge that gap, that training or education or innovation uptake gap. So I think that's something we should look into European experiences, good experiences, and also on the policy making and support side. how to bridge this gap. And also I looked at one of our colleagues from Romania asked me about the status of AKIS in Eastern Europe. And I think that's my second message, is that it's very important to have the patience of policymakers with EIP and AKIS, because this is a new instrument and it's not developed on the same very nice level as Corolla mentioned, or in the Flemish example. Just to say the Hungarian example, we have 130 groups, but still there is no money behind EIP groups. So it's just still starting. And I know that some other Eastern European countries are in the same position. And because this is a very difficult, complex measure with a lot of soft element, and it needs a sort of trust from the authorities side as well. And this kind of trust, or how to say, compliance level is not the same in all the countries. So it would be very nice to have at least 1 7-year period to learn from the examples of the first 7 years, and let us try to correct the measures connected to EIP and AKIS. And I think that is something Corolla also mentioned, that we need a sort of stability from the policymakers. But that's very, very difficult in Eastern Europe because these 4-year periods of political mechanisms are even more important than in some other countries. So I think, and also about motivation, it's also part of this stability. If you have a stable system, then it finds its way into the budgets, on the national budgets. And then you have a stable motivational background, not just project-based motivational background. That's also very important in our countries. And that's very difficult to get. So it's a sort of daily struggle of financing. So that's the two message.
Thank you very much, Anniko. And again, once again, my apologies for not coming to you sooner. We have some questions here, and we're a little bit over time, but I'm just going to squeeze a couple of questions in here with your permission. Tom, there's a question here for you. It's in relation to convincing. You talked about convincing the management of the importance of the change from FAS, but what about practitioners? And how do we convince practitioners of this need to move to an AKIS type system?
Yeah, I suppose in terms of convincing them, I think that by and large they are, if the mechanism is there, that they are rewarded for service. In other words, whether it's facilitation of groups or facilitation of events or other more bottom-up type approaches, if there are systems there that will compensate them for their time, I think that's a type of monetary reward. But equally, I think they will be rewarded by the satisfaction of working with a community of practitioners or farmers or whoever they are, SMEs, to try and achieve that. So there is more motivation in terms of achieving things as a group than just giving advice to farmers for compensation or dealing with paperwork for farmers and walking away from the business. But I think that there has to be a happy medium between what the role is of that particular AKIS actor in terms of development, and what the development of the AKIS system and what the element of their work is to do with servicing the needs, immediate needs, be they administrative or technical needs of the farmers individually.
Okay, Tom, thank you very much for that. We're going to have to end our session here because we are over time. Just thank you for your questions, and what I think we might try and do is to provide some written responses to the questions that have been posed. But look, we'll have a chance over the next couple of days, hopefully, to integrate those into our discussions. Thank you, Victor, Corolla, Anniko, Shell, and Tom for your really excellent contributions. And I look forward to discussing all of these topics with you over the next number of days. So I'm going to hand back to Sarah, and hope you enjoy the rest of our seminar over the next number of days. So thank you very much.